What is up, everybody? Welcome to the new channel. It was a matter of time. I had to do it. This probably is your first video watching the DC20 YouTube channel. So if you want to click that red button, it absolutely helps this little baby channel. I just want to get it to 1,000 subscribers because it actually there's things that I can do with the channel that I functionally am not allowed to right now. So getting to 1,000 is kind of a big deal. So that'd be huge. But that's not what this channel's about. What this channel's about is just pure DC20 unfiltered. If I have a thought, I'm like, you know what, I want to make a video about DC20. I don't have to worry about the algorithm. I don't have to worry about the health of the main channel and all that kind of stuff. I'm still gonna be making content on that main channel. I have a welcome video explaining that. But this is all about news updates, the direction ideas, different thoughts, different feedback points, and all this kind of stuff, all right here on an entire channel dedicated just to that. And people possibly finding this in the future, and maybe this is the first place that they find it because they look for DC20. Who knows? Anyway, this video is a paired connection with the other video. So in the other video on the main channel, I will link that in the very, very top of the description. On the main channel, I go through the whole thing about the 0.6 update. I talk about a lot of the key points, the highlights, the 3 new classes, the Beastborn Ancestry, the 4 new spells, attribute overhaul, all these types of things. I go over all of those things, right? So that video, I talk about all of those things. Anything that I did not talk about is going to be in this video because I don't want people who watch that video to then now be like, oh, now I got to listen to them say the same stuff again. I'm only going to say new stuff in this video. So watch this video. It's going to talk about a bunch of stuff I did not say in that video. And then you'll have the full picture between the 2 videos combined together. Whether you watch that one first, this one first, doesn't matter because we're just talking about updates. I literally have the changelog in front of me. So let's go. First thing is the attribute overhaul. We've talked about that. There's also a video I'll put in the description for the attribute overhaul if you want to get up to date with that there too. Skills and trades and languages. I talked about that in the last video. Mastery changes is all the same thing that I talked about there too. Checks and saves. There's a section added about willing creatures. Willing creatures. You can fail any check or save that you want. Like you can choose to fail, and there's just a specific rule now that says that. I talked about language mastery only has 2 now instead of 3. That's fine. And language checks is codified and made sure that if you have a limited language mastery, which means you are not fluent in the language, you might have to make a language check to be able to understand what's going on, which is always cool. And then new thing for critical failures on spell checks. Critical failures on spell checks, you now spend NP on a natural 1 spell check. Used to, you did not spend MP on a natural 1 spell check. There's some things outside of combat. There was just there was no bad things that would happen outside of combat. You would just, oh, well, I didn't cast a spell. So in general, I think this is a better health for the game. I am going to watch this because I don't want it to feel too bad when you get a nat 1, but I think that's the whole thing about spell casting, baby. Nat 1, super bad. You wasted your action points, especially if it's in combat, and you wasted the mana. But man, could you get a natural 20? Could you roll high? It makes spell checks. It makes magic feel alive, and I think the low end needs to be addressed as well as the high end, so I do think that's important. I talked about dynamic saves and save DCs in the main video, or in the main channel's video. Attacks and defense. Yeah, I added, agility now applies to light armor and heavy armor, right? It applies to both. It is how well you're able to move and position yourself. Yes, you still need a certain amount of might to wear heavy armor, and heavy armor still gives physical damage reduction, whereas light armor does not. But it is, your formula for it is 8 plus your combat mastery, as always, right? Plus your armor bonus, as always, which is 1 for light armor and 2 for heavy armor. And heavy armor gets physical damage reduction. But everything adds your agility. This is just a quality of life improvement also across the board. So at character creation, I just say the physical defense formula because there's only 1 formula now, unless you're a special barbarian or monk, right? And it's way simpler for character creation, which I've felt the benefit of multiple times now from playtest of running it the new way. And then health is now the base for health is 5 instead of 4 now, which does have some added benefits. It's 5 plus 2 times your level, which that part's the same, plus your might, and that's it now. Now, there's still, yes, is a possible ancestry bonus and possible class bonus. That's also still true. And also a cool little update for class bonus. At level 1, now I can say this now because it used to not be this, and you used to have to remember like, oh, does a monk have +1 health at level 1? I don't know. Now it's very simple. All martial classes in their table, in their little class chart table, all martial classes get +1 health at level 1. All of them get +1 health at level 1, and spellcasters do not. Very simple. Marshals are in the front lines. Marshals are in there kind of moving around, surviving. They're a bit more survivable, a bit more tough than their spellcaster counterparts. And barbarians no longer get 2 health at level 1, but they still have the most health overall. They're the only ones that get a health every single level. Other classes do not get a health every single level, right? So there's that. And then added a whole section on temporary hit points and how they work, which you can't stack temporary hit points. You only have one version of them, and if you have another version, you either can wipe for the new one, or it replaces, however you want to do it. You can only have one source of temporary hit points at a time. They don't stack. We're all used to that, but that rule is now just in the game. I talked about I added a whole section for damage calculation, because one thing I've seen and struggled with in playtests that I've seen online and YouTube videos or different people is calculating damage, and people have ran into snags about oh wait, so how do I added a whole section in there about a damage calculation sidebar, which is just my tips on how to calculate damage in DC20 and how to make it so simple. Literally, how I would do it is the base damage of the weapon. So let's say I hit with a longsword. So I hit you with a longsword with one hand or whatever. So it's base of 2 damage. And then I think, did I heavy or brutal hit? Calculate that next. So heavy, brutal, critical, add up how many of the heavies and brutals, right? Or critical. Did I get more points of that? Let's just say it's a heavy. Boom. So +1. Then any sort of action points that you spent or not spent. If you do any maneuvers, okay, cool. And then do you have any passive properties, like a weapon property or whatever? Yeah, cool, right? And then cool, you're done. So it just systemizes it in a way that you can kind of go through the same process every time, so you don't miss anything, and you're not, oh, what about, oh, the barbarian was raging. Oh, I forgot about this. Oh, was it a heavy or brutal? So it's just, I gave you some tips on how to run that now, right? Resistances and vulnerabilities have been streamlined as far as vocabulary goes. I talked about that in the other video. Combat resources. I have a whole section in there about a combat action sidebar. There's been some confusion about like, oh, inside of combat, outside of combat, how do action points work in or outside of combat? I have a whole section now that dives into that and really paints a clean picture of what that looks like. Grit points. Grit points are a new thing now in combat resources. You can spend grit points to give yourself advantage on a save, or an ally that can see or hear you advantage on a save. Lets charisma shine and lets you be able to kind of cheer on others for some cool roleplay moments. I talked about that a little bit, but there's that. Minor action is now a bit more flexible as far as the wording of it's concerned. The new text, I'm going to make sure it's the new text, but once per turn, you can perform up to 2 of the following actions without spending action points, but you cannot take any additional actions between these 2 actions. So what some people were doing is trying to like have a shields on, and then minor action to get a weapon out and attack, but then minor, and then unsheath, and it's doing some weird stuff. So the minor action is supposed to be this little blow off action you can do something small with. It's not supposed to be something you're trying to abuse to have some weird, dumb interactions of mechanics that you're trying to abuse, right? That's not the intent. Stop it. I see you. So the whole thing now is it's the same thing. It lets you perform 2 of the following things: opening a door, closing a door, whatever, but you have to do those contained, right? So if you open a door, you saw a bunch of stuff, you could close the door as all part of the same minor action. But if you open a door, run inside, attack somebody, walk, you don't have like the other half of that minor action, right? It doesn't linger, right? So you have to use it, the minor action, in that window, in that pocket, and then it's done. It's more flexible, but it's in the pocket of when you use it, right? Unlike movement in DC20, where you spend movement and you can spin that movement across the whole turn, super smooth. Hey, everything's fine. So don't worry about that. But there's that, and then the jump action's now a martial check. When you take the jump action, it's a martial check instead of an athletics check. That's pretty simple. Reactions. It's now specifically codified to say you can only take 1 reaction per trigger. So if someone triggers an opportunity attack, you can choose to do this thing, right? There's some weird interactions where, and this is per character as well. So if something happens, people had sometimes multiple triggers to do multiple things in this one little moment, and it got real weird. So you can choose to do 1 reaction per trigger of that reaction, right? So that makes things a lot more simple. And then maneuvers as well are only you can only perform a maneuver 1 time per attack, except for the power attack. You can perform the power attack +1 damage as much as you want, but all other maneuvers you can only perform once, which in general for them just makes sense. You can't prone someone multiple times, you know what I'm saying? Also, I said this in the main video, but to also clarify, the prone maneuver is now 2 action points instead of 1 because prone is just strong, right? I already talked about maneuvers and techniques and all that stuff in the main video. The bow has a new passive. The bow has a new passive of the bow and crossbow in 0.5 had a mechanic that I'm not a fan of a critting on 19 or 20. In certain spots, maybe in a subclass, maybe in a whatever, sure, critting on 19 or 20 might be a thing, but in general, I don't want a weapon to crit on 19 or 20. I want to keep 20 natural 20s to be like a big important thing. So I've removed that from the bow and crossbow and replaced it with some cooler stuff that doesn't involve that. So the bow passive is now you deal +1 damage against the last target you attacked since the start of your last turn. So the whole idea is if I'm targeting on here, I am set my sights on, I'm aiming at this target. I fire, and I have more damage and I'm better able to hit the same target multiple times as I'm aiming at this target consistently, right? So I feel like that feels very bow-like, right? And then taunt maneuver is now able to have an attack check or intimidation check, right? So if you are specifically good at intimidating, you can use an intimidation check. And if not, you're trying to, in the heat of battle, do something to intimidate another person, you can use an attack check because that also makes sense because you're being threatening with your force of power and stuff. Next thing, techniques. We already talked about techniques. Some little tweaks and changes to heroic bash, heroic leap, and heroic taunt. Heroic taunt added the intimidation check as well. Added a new technique enhancement to far leap or to heroic leap, and dual wielding. Move the rules from dual wielding to be able to be used with unarmed strikes, and we move the rules from dual wielding from where it was in like weapons or something over to creatures in combat. It's in the different section now, but it's still the same, and it's specifically clears up that light weapons, unarmed strikes all count for dual wielding type purposes, right? Also, there's something in there about shields being able to be considered a light weapon in this case of dual wielding. So if you have a weapon and a shield, you can make an attack with your weapon and make an attack with your shield, and that would not suffer from multiple attack penalty. But the shield doesn't have any properties. It only deals 1 damage. It doesn't have any maneuvers associated with it or passives or anything like that. So it is weaker as far as a weapon's concerned, but you could do a little of this, do a little bit of that, you know what I'm saying? And then, throwing creatures and grappling things. All of the interactions that have to do with like grabbing or throwing or shoving or anything displacement of movement is now all focused on the person doing it, right? Because before there was a chart that said like if you were larger, you have advantage, and if you were smaller, you had disadvantage. But then it created a really weird, like medium versus medium was a straight up roll off, but then large versus medium. This is smaller, so they had disadvantage, and this is larger, so it had advantage, and it was a big swing, and it got weird. So now it's all from the perspective of the person doing the grappling. So if I am larger and I'm grappling you, I get advantage. You always make a straight roll. But if I am smaller and I'm trying to grapple a larger, I am smaller, I have disadvantage. They always make it, the target always makes a straight roll, right? Unless they have some other features, right? There's also going to be some things having to do with mounted rules being added in there. I've seen some comments here and there in Discord and in YouTube comments. Mounted rules are a thing. They are coming, not right now, but there's going to be a thing where if the creature's too large to where you cannot grapple it, if you still choose to grapple it, you now mount it, and your speed becomes 0, and you are grappled to it, which is mounting essentially, right? But that's coming soon. Also added a new thing on non-lethal attacks that you can declare your attack to be non-lethal, a melee attack to be non-lethal. It's just a little quality of life rule there. Equipment, overall stuff with equipment. A new weapon property has been added to the game called Threatening. You provoke opportunity attacks when you make an attack with this weapon. The Threatening weapon property has been given to 2 weapons specifically, and maybe you can see why I gave it to these 2 weapons specifically, because it is the Great Bow and the Light Ballista, the big version of the crossbow and the big version of the bow. They were about to be removed from the game. Full honesty, full transparency. I almost just cut them from the game because I was like, these are just, and they are about to get cut from the game. So we'll see if people are trying to abuse it or this, that, or the other, and it gets weird and stuff like that. But they now have a little bit of adjustments added to them. They both have unwieldy. Unwieldy is disadvantage on attacks close to you, right? Which ranged weapons already have that, so it's even worse for them. But then Threatening is a very large ranged weapon, right? That's very cumbersome to fire. it provokes opportunity attacks whenever you fire the weapon, right? So that's going to be a lot more dangerous as far as if someone does get up close to you and gives a little bit more of a decision on, do I want to wield this weapon? I don't know. We'll see, right? Fist weapons, boulder gauntlets have been streamlined as far. There's some confusion with boulder gauntlets. They now just deal 2 damage instead of 3, and they no longer have a 2-handed property where you have to, which confused people as far as the intent of the weapons, right? And knuckles have been renamed to be called brass knuckles. Cool. We already talked about bows and crossbows in the thing. There's a new thing called the gauntlet, which is just the base 2 damage, right? Which you can just wear gauntlets and be able to have a little bit more of a bang to your punch, right? Healing potions had their cost reduced by 1/5. I've been messing with the economy of the game. I'm running my own campaign, right? I've talked about that before. I'm running my DC20 campaign, and I'm really playing around with the economy. I'm playing around with all the different stuff, and first aid kits cost versus the healing potions cost, starting equipment cost, all these types of things. And healing potions were just at 50 gold, they were just so expensive, insanely so, just for 1 healing potion. So it's a simple 2 health. That's all it does. It just heals for 2, right? So they've gone from 50 gold down to 10 gold, and it scales up to 100 gold for a level 5 potion. So it definitely scales and gets more expensive the more condensed it is. Also, just from a lore standpoint, real quick random nugget here, I picture healing potions. You can picture them however you want. I picture healing potions like a shot glass. I don't have any sort of, it'd be like literally smaller than this, right? Like, it'd be like a pop, whoop, like, there you go, right? Making more sense of why it's even faster, and it's not this big thing you're freaking chugging, right? But that's just in my head, but you do you, right? All the conditions have been alphabetized. Some of y'all will be very excited about that, but all the conditions are now alphabetized. They were specifically in a certain order for certain the game design reasons, but now I feel like, okay, fine, we can move and shuffle them around. They're in a much less efficient version for me to be able to look at as far as comparing them to each other, but they're alphabetized, which is probably better for everybody else. And then rest points now heal for an amount equal to your might instead of agility or might, because now might is the king of health, right? So that makes sense there. And agility is also in a better spot now across the board because of all the changes for agility. So I think everybody's feeling in a good spot. And then long rest now causes you to lose all levels of the doomed condition as well. You don't have to, it doesn't take a full rest anymore. Character creation, I talked about that. New ancestries is so cool. Overview, we talked about that too. Elves frail. Elves had a frail trait, which reduces your HP by 2 now instead of 1. It was a little bit, it was just basically like a free 1 ancestry trait to lose 1 health, which was like really, really good, right? So now you have to think about it a little bit more for these negative traits. Also across the board, oh my God, I did not say this in the main video. I should have said this in the main video, is all attributes that increase your, all ancestry traits that increase your attribute by 1 have been removed from the game because they create lame freaking characters. I'm sorry, maybe that's a hot take, but what I kept seeing people do was create a character where they purposely would pick these ancestries so that they could get a +1 might and a +1 charisma. And so then out of the 5 points they have to spend, they're spending 2 on 1 more might, 2 on 1 more charisma, and then they have 1 point to get 1 flavorful something or other. That's a boring character. I'm sorry. I know I'm not targeting min-maxers in any way. Trust me. I love my min-maxers. Hopefully if you know me, you know I do. I love all the types of players, right? But it's just a far more bland character for you to just be a stat stick. And that's not what I wanted the intention of of ancestries to do, is just to be another stat stick. Oh, +1 here and +1 there. No, you already have your attributes. You're fine. So only humans can have +1 attribute, and that's it. Only humans get 1. That's their special thing. That's it, right? Every other ancestry's boost to attributes is removed. So now characters have to actually choose cool and unique features to express the type of character they are, and they can play the game differently with a cool orc rush that they can rush into, or halfling bravery. They are unique and situational in certain times, and that's going to feel better as far as the dynamic type of character you are instead of just some stat stick, right? So there's that. Dragonborn's breath weapon resets on a roll for initiative. It can once per long rest, or when you roll for initiative, it recharges. The surge of battle, right? A new draconic protection trait has been added for death's door and protecting those around you, because there's some lore about dragons and they're natural protectors in some way. Giantborn have had the extremely tough health removed. Giantborn have another feature added to them, which is actually a cool little buff for them. But the extremely tough feat, or the extremely tough ancestry trait, gave 2 health, and then there was a tough ancestry trait that gave 1 health, and then people were just spending 3 points to gain 3 health, which again is not a dynamic character. That's not the goal. So Giantborn have tough, but they don't have extremely tough, and the extremely tough is just removed from the game. So sure, you can have an ancestry, and you can pick tough and get 1 more health, sure. But that's as far as that goes. There were some multi-classing and prestige changes and updates, which were needed, but honestly, multi-classing and prestige, I probably shouldn't keep updating this, because nobody's playing the game at levels 11 through 20 right now, so I honestly shouldn't have even released it at all, and just kept it on the side for y'all until it was ready. But I updated that too. And then we talked about the classes. So now here's some of the class updates for each of the classes. Barbarian Savage Defense, you can now choose agility or might for your physical defense formula. So you don't have to be a might barbarian. You don't have to. It is might or agility. You're fine. You can choose might or agility in your physical defense formula for barbarians. And then Battle Cry now has 3 options instead of just 1. Fortitude gives you 1 physical damage reduction against the next hit. It's a temporary buff. Battle Cry, you yell and you give your allies around you a buff. Fury gives your allies advantage on a physical check. Whew. And Strength gives your allies +1 damage on attacks, right? So wow, cool, right? So anyway, I think that was a cool thing to just give the barbarians a little bit of a buff there. And then Fighter, you only gain stamina while performing an attack or an attack or save maneuver, right? Not a defensive maneuver. That was never really the intent. And like, it's the first time a fighter used a defensive maneuver to regain a stamina. I was like, that's kind of interesting. Did not, so now with the different way that maneuvers now work, I think the fighter stamina is going to be much more in line. They really had just the best stamina, like too strong probably. So I think this puts it in line of what the intent for the fighter stamina was in the first place. Close quarters fighting style has been removed from the game. It was stacking with archery and doing some weird stuff there that was not intended. But close quarters will come back at level 5. It's been pushed back to level 5 fighter feature. A little sneak peek there. We talked about Monk. We've talked about the Monk thing in the main video, and the Paladin in the main video, and Scion and Ranger. Ooh, favorite terrain for the Ranger. A new type of favorite terrain is added of jungle. It was the only biome that was not in the original favorite terrain as jungle. So now they added jungle terrain, which lets you ignore difficult terrain, and you gain advantage on saves against being poisoned or contracting diseases. So I thought that was a perfectly fit for the little jungle rangers there. Rogues gain more skill points. Rogues gain 1 more skill point at levels 1, 2, 4, 7, and 9. They just get more skill points straight up across the board. And then rogue stamina, they now also regain 1 stamina if you hit a flanked target, not just conditions. And expertise is changed to, we just reworded some of the things about expertise and stuff. I already talked about the Sorcerer. Warlord got a huge update to their heraldic banner as far as how their banner works. Added a new thing. You can take the help action to people in the banner. You can help people with their saves within the banner, and they can gain temporary hit points inside the banner. So they have more features now that they can use their banner with at level 2. And then Wizards. Mana Limit Break is now able to be used outside of combat, and you can get it once per long rest, but it also does come back when initiative's rolled for. Similar to the Dragonborn Breath Weapon. That is a mechanic that I do like in DC20, where you have this ability you can use once per long rest, but if combat breaks out, it comes back, baby, right? So that prevents people outside of combat from spamming it, right? And then inside of combat, it also prevents you from spamming it inside of combat, right? But at least it comes back for you. So I think it's a beautiful game design wise, as far as I think you expect to see that more, because I really do like where that kind of puts things, right? There was a little bit of a nerf to Magic Missile. It's been nerfed by 1 damage to put it in line with some things, but more spell things are going to be coming in the spell update overhaul. That's going to be a future update. And then the last thing is sorcery points and Wizards Arcane points. You used to regain 2 on a short rest, Now it's regain half, right? So you only have 2 at low levels, so you're gaining 1 back instead of all of them, right? But at higher levels, it would feel way worse if you have like 8 points to only get 2 back instead of half, which is 4. You know, so it just scales better because a lot of this, as we continue to build out the game, we're looking towards those later levels and really keeping scaling in mind and all that kind of stuff. So that is the update. So there's the full thing. Hopefully now, if you didn't see the original video, go check that out so you can get the full big picture of 0.6. If you want to pick up 0.6, links in the description, but make sure you also go to another link in the description to get a $5 off, which also works on anything. If you already have the alpha and you just want a $5 off anything on the website, it's a one-time use code for $5 off. It's this whole thing I got going on right now. It's just, I'm trying to work on some new ways to kind of get you guys more stuff and more deals and more type of things like that. So check that out. And the Kickstarter comes out soon. We're less than 3 months away now. Absolutely crazy stuff. This channel is also going to have things posted about the campaign and some other things going on. So, but anyway, that's the whole thing. And I guess I could have the same tagline for this channel as I do for the other one. Stay creative, think outside the box. Peace.